You know the scene, right? We've all been there. You're in a meeting, maybe at a family get-together, or you're just scrolling through the comments section online. And there they are. That one person who speaks with this just unshakable confidence about something they clearly know next to nothing about. It's totally baffling. And if we're being honest, it's pretty frustrating. Haven't you ever just kind of paused and thought, what is going on here? Why does it seem like the person with the loudest voice often has the shallowest pool of knowledge? It feels like it should be the other way around, but we see it happen all the time. Well, it turns out you're not going crazy. You're not just imagining things. This isn't just some weird personality quirk that some people have. Nope. There is a very real, well-documented psychological reason for this exact thing. And once you understand it, it can honestly change how you think about competence, confidence, and even your own ability to learn. And that reason has a name. It's called the Dunning-Kruger Effect. And man, it perfectly explains that old saying, a little knowledge can be a dangerous thing. So what in the world is it? Simply put, it's a cognitive bias where people who have a very low level of skill in something dramatically overestimate how good they actually are. The less they know, the more they think they know. It's this wild, upside-down paradox of incompetence. So what's going on under the hood? What's the engine that's driving this massive blind spot? Well, it all comes down to one core concept: poor metacognition. Now, that might sound like a fancy academic term, but the idea behind it is actually super simple and really powerful. At its heart, metacognition is just thinking about your thinking. It's that ability to kind of step outside of yourself and accurately judge what you know and what you don't. It's self-awareness. It's knowing the limits of your own knowledge. And when that self-awareness is missing, that's when the Dunning-Kruger effect can really take hold. Okay, so that's the theory. But what does this look like out in the wild? How can you actually spot it in other people, or maybe, even more importantly, in yourself? Let's break down 6 common habits that are total red flags for the Dunning-Kruger effect in action.
First up, and this one is the absolute classic sign.
You see this massive overconfidence that just has no real understanding to back it up. This is the person who reads one article headline or watches a 3-minute video on a super complex topic and then starts talking like they've been studying it for 20 years. They'll throw around jargon they don't quite get, and they present these really basic ideas like there's some kind of profound breakthrough. And it's all because they don't know enough to see how much they're missing.
The second red flag is kind of a defense mechanism.
They will actively avoid feedback. Someone who's deep in the Dunning-Kruger effect doesn't hear constructive criticism as something helpful. To them, it feels like a personal attack. I mean, think about it. If you genuinely believe you're already an expert, then any feedback that says otherwise must be wrong, or the person giving it must have an agenda, right? It's a mindset that just completely shuts down any chance of real growth.
And that leads us right into our third and very revealing habit:
constantly blaming other people when things go wrong. So if you can't see your own shortcomings and you refuse to listen to anyone who tries to point them out, what happens when a project fails? Well, it can't possibly be your fault, so it has to be someone else's. The instructions were bad, the team was lazy, the tools were wrong. Anyone and anything is to blame, except for... And this little chart just lays out the difference perfectly. See, with high metacognition, the immediate reaction is, okay, let's learn from this. The focus is on improvement. But with low metacognition, the focus is all about deflecting blame to protect the ego. One path leads to growth, and the other leads to getting stuck right where you are. Number 4. Now this habit can be especially toxic on a team. They just dismiss the advice of actual experts. I mean, if you think you've already got it all figured out, then a real expert isn't a source of wisdom. They're just some person with a different and obviously wrong opinion. You might hear them say things like, oh, that's just ivory tower theory, or that person doesn't know how things work in the real world, completely brushing aside years or even decades of deep experience in favor of their own shallow take.
Okay, number 5. This one is a little more subtle.
They actually have a hard time recognizing real competence in other people. And here's the critical piece of the puzzle. The exact same skills you need to be good at something are the skills you need to recognize who else is good at it. So if you don't understand the nuances of a topic, you literally can't tell the difference between a real pro and someone else who's just faking it with confidence. And finally, our 6th habit, which really ties this whole thing together. They are basically unable to learn from their own mistakes. This brings us right back to that idea of metacognition.
Because if you can't even recognize that you made a mistake in the first place and you refuse any feedback that tries to point it out, well, then how on earth could you ever learn from it? You can't. You get trapped in this loop, making the same errors over and over again, all while being completely unaware. So we've gone through these 6 red flags. And it's really tempting now to go out and start diagnosing everyone you know. But that's not really the point. The real power in understanding the Dunning-Kruger effect is about turning that lens around and pointing it back at ourselves. It's about figuring out how we can move from that fragile false confidence toward real earned competence. So what's the big takeaway from all of this? Look, this isn't about getting a new label to stick on other people. It's a tool to build our own self-awareness. True intelligence isn't about having all the answers. It's about knowing the limits of what you know. And that path to getting truly good at something, it always starts with the humility to say, I have a lot to learn. So questioning yourself isn't a sign of weakness. It's actually the biggest sign of strength. It's the first step to getting better. So I want to leave you with this one question to chew on. We all have these blind spots. It's just part of being human. So take a second and think. What's one area, just one, where you feel really confident, one belief you hold as just fact, that you've never really tried to challenge? The answer to that question might just be the starting line for your next big adventure in learning.